So the question becomes, it's not, do I love them? The deeper question is, am I loving myself inside of this dynamic? Because if staying requires you to silence your voice, hide your feelings, ignore the signals your body is communicating to you, if you have to explain away disrespect or accept harm or hurt over and over and over again, then that is not the energy or vibration of love. That's self-abandonment. And no healthy relationship can be built on a foundation of self-abandonment. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great week. Welcome back to the podcast. I had a great time last week talking to Rose Vigiano and diving in a little bit more about how attachment plays out in our relationships. And it's always fun for me to bring in someone else's perspective because you guys listen to me talk a lot and you listen to my perspective a lot. So it's kind of fun to bring someone else in and get to share their knowledge and wisdom. And it's always great to have Rose be a part of anything that I'm doing. Really, we came up together in a sense, and I'm really proud of her and I'm proud of the work that she does in this world. And it got me thinking about starting to shift this a little bit and some of the topics towards relationship dynamics. We've been talking a lot about our relationship to ourselves and learning all of these really beautiful tools and skills, the boundary pyramid, being able to connect to our parts of self, being able to emotionally attune to ourselves. But I know that for myself, and I think it's true for a lot of people that have come into this work, there's something that's confusing that we're taught about love and relationships. And it's this idea that if you really love someone, you should accept them no matter what. Now, please hear me out. Anything that I say that sounds black and white, I have to give a disclaimer that nothing in this work is black and white. It might come off sometimes when I'm explaining it in kind of a general sense, but there's a nuance to everything. Everybody's having their own personal experience. So if anything feels a little too black and white, know that there is nuance to everything I'm teaching here in this podcast. So of course we want to accept our partners for who they are. And that is a form of being witnessed and seen in a relationship. And it's really important. And there is a difference between unconditional love and unconditional tolerance. For a lot of us, especially those of us that came from maybe some dysfunctional family systems where we still had a lot of love and loyalty within that system. Sometimes it gets a little bit confusing for us that if you really love someone, it means you stay no matter what. It means you endure no matter what. It means that you forgive over and over and over again. And there's something that I want to say very clearly today, that we are, as human beings, capable of unconditional love. I think that God is, for me, the best example of unconditional love I've ever experienced. I fancy myself a touch the stove to see if it's hot type of gal. The God, the universe, source, creator, whatever we want to call it, it never stopped me from touching the stove. It loved me enough to let me do it as many times as I wanted to. It never restricted air, sunlight, all of the things I needed. Like, it's amazing to me that the universe will love you exactly where you are and give everyone the exact same amount of love. Every minute of every day is a new moment to choose differently, to act more loving to yourself and others. I think that a parent-child relationship and a healthy example is a beautiful example of unconditional love. There is nothing, not anything that I love more than I love my child. And it's true. I hadn't experienced love in the way that I did with my son until he was put right on my chest when I delivered him almost 16 years ago. It's so crazy. But that was the sense of unconditional love. Like I just met this baby and yet I will take a bullet for it. I would die for him. No questions asked. That is something we are capable of. What we are not capable of is unconditional tolerance. We can love someone deeply and still not tolerate behavior that is harmful. You can have compassion for someone and still have boundaries with them. You can care deeply about someone's humanity and still say, this dynamic is not healthy for me. And I believe this is a big misunderstood truth in relationships. And of course, at the core of it is codependency. Codependency meaning if you're okay, I'm okay. That we are in some sort of state of chronic self-neglect. And for a lot of us, that dynamic was in the relationships we grew up in. Personally, I don't know anyone who doesn't have some sort of codependent dynamic in their family system. And I'm wondering if that is kind of a big collective shift that's happening, that a lot of us are waking up to codependent dynamics. Codependent meaning that the way we're showing up in that relationship is sourced more from fear than from the vibration of love. For many of us, there's been this unconscious conditioning that if we really love someone, we tolerate. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I do believe there is an energetic difference between patience and tolerance. Patience says, hey, I'm going to show up with love for a period of time while you are working on something, while you are being human, while you are learning and growing. Tolerance, in my opinion, is sourced from fear. It says, I'm too afraid to leave you. I'm too afraid to be by myself. I'm too afraid to have boundaries. I believe that healthy love requires something different. I believe that healthy love requires limits that protect both people. So let me slow this down for a second. Love as a feeling may be unconditional, but relationships are not. Relationships are living ecosystems. In fact, I believe Rose used that term in our last episode. They require care. They require effort. They require behavior that keeps the connection healthy. Without limits, love starts to be impacted by resentment, exhaustion, anxiety, disrespect, self-abandonment. And many people stay in that place because they think that enduring it proves the depths of their love. But love without limits or boundaries doesn't allow for intimacy. Into me, you see. What happens is it creates self-sacrifice or self-abandonment. And self-sacrifice might look noble from the outside. Trust me, I see many an Instagram post that says, happy birthday, so-and-so, or happy Mother's Day, so-and-so. You are so selfless. Now, I'm not here to judge anybody's languaging. I'm not a fan of that languaging because specifically for women, I think we've been applauded for being selfless. And a lot of us are dealing with a lot of ramifications and consequences for living a life in which we are catering to the needs and energy of everyone else around us and us last. And that isn't noble. That comes with a cost. And internally, it slowly erodes your sense of self. Unconditional love says, I care about you. I see your humanity. I want growth for you. I can hold compassion for your pain. Unconditional tolerance says something very different. It says, I will accept anything you do. I will endure harm. I will silence myself in order to keep this connection. And those two things are not the same. You can love someone and still have limits around their behavior that impacts you. That is not cruel. That is not a lack of loyalty in the relationship. It is that you are showing up with loyalty for yourself first. I'm a firm believer that anything we do to someone else, we did to ourselves first. So if you cheat on someone and you betrayed them, guess who you betrayed first? Yourself. If you love someone else, if you can attune to someone else, you do that to you first. And then it is like this light that spreads to other people. So if you are exercising loyalty to someone else, I highly suggest that the first stop is loyalty towards yourself. Now, again, not from a black and white perspective. I know we've talked about the quote, a dishonest yes is a no to self from Byron Katie. And when we're in relationship with people, when we are in the vibration of love with other people, sometimes we don't want to do things, but we are choosing to be in the energy of love to honor that person. So maybe we will stay up with them and hold their hair when they're throwing up and you have in the middle of the night and you have a 6 a.m. meeting the next day. Maybe you'll hear that story about golf again when you have no interest in the sport, right? Like we are going to maybe do something we wouldn't typically want to do because we're honoring the love. We're choosing to be loving. So in a lot of ways, a lot of this podcast is a little love letter to a version of me that was seeking out information about relationships and truly what was normal and what wasn't normal. And the internet was a much different place. Social media was a much different place. I'm not even sure if there was social media now that I'm thinking back to it. It's definitely not in the same way. So this episode is for any of you who were in a position like me where it was like, okay, well, I hear all this talk about healthy relationships and what to tolerate and what not to tolerate. But like, what does it look like? So there are certain behaviors that require limits or boundaries for relationships to stay healthy, for you to stay protected, for you to stay in connection with yourself and not self-abandon. So here are some examples: cheating, lying, gaslighting. Now, gaslighting is a term I hear misused a lot, and that's okay. But gaslighting really means when someone is altering your reality. So it might sound like, they pushed you down the stairs and you go, you just pushed me down the stairs. And they go, no, I didn't. You fell. That didn't happen. When you're in an argument with someone, they call you a name and you go, hey, you called me a name. And they say, no, I didn't do that. You're making that up. And you start to question your reality. Like, did that even happen? That's gaslighting. It's not when people don't agree with you. It's not when people won't acknowledge what you're saying. It's truly that they are shifting your perception of reality. And it's not okay. Name calling, invalidating your feelings, yelling or intimidation, stonewalling or refusing to repair. Stonewalling mean that they completely shut down communication. Constant criticism. And I would even take constant out of that. Listen, we're all human. We all get a little critical. When this is a repeated pattern, that requires a limit. someone who's controlling you, controlling your choices, isolating you from support, breaking agreements repeatedly, dismissing your needs, weaponizing your vulnerability. Love does not require you to endure those things. All of these things in the list that I just wrote you are forms of abusive behavior. No one is required to tolerate abuse. It doesn't matter how much you love someone. That behavior is unacceptable and it's unhealthy. From a vibrational perspective, there is nothing negative about love. Sometimes love calls you into action when it's hard. Like often we are loving to people when it's hard. There is nothing negative about love. Abuse and love are not the same vibrational energy. So love, the vibration of love does not require you to normalize disrespect or abusive behavior. And love does not require you to abandon yourself. That's really the big differentiating quality for me between codependency and love. Love and codependency both have love. Codependency requires you to abandon yourself. A lot of our early conditioning and relational experiences have allowed us to tolerate a certain amount of emotional drama, chaos, pain, etc. in our relationships. Maybe it was familiar to us that if we left someone, that was unloving or a betrayal. If we set a boundary that was selfish or hurtful to the other person, if we asked for change in the relationship, maybe we felt like we were too much. So we stay, we tolerate, we rationalize, we minimize, we will explain away other people's behavior, and we will often overfunction in the relationship dynamic. When these things are happening in our relationships, it is our attachment wounding that is driving the ability to stay and tolerate in the relationship. That anxious attachment sword will fight harder to stay in connection. The avoidant shield will tolerate less and disconnect. The ambivalent freeze will get stuck in the decision of which action to take. But a secure attachment, that type of love understands something different. Secure love understands that love must be safe in order to stay and grow intimacy. So obviously we've talked a lot about boundaries and limits on this podcast, but it's still something that's very common that people will hear the word boundary or limit and immediately think of the word ultimatum. And please know that boundaries and ultimatums are not the same thing. Boundaries are simply a way to take care of yourself, honor yourself, and keep yourself safe. Ultimatums, to me, are more of like a threat, more of something that we're doing to alter the way we're showing up to control an outcome. Like, hey, if you do this, this is what I'm going to do. I know that I have given ultimatums in my life and never followed through with them. So that's not a boundary. That's a means to control. Boundaries aren't really about the other person at all. It's about self-protection. That's why a lot of times you don't even need to communicate the boundary with the other person. It's an agreement with yourself. So remember that a boundary is not a threat. Having a limit is clarity about what is required for connection to continue in a safe way. So some limits might sound like, I need honesty in this relationship. I need emotional safety. I need respectful communication. I need repair when there is conflict or something has happened that has impacted the other person. I need consistency. Now, those are a little bit more focused to the need, but that's the first place we start. And then we don't go there threatening. Remember that equation with boundaries. If you do blank, I do blank. If you are not able to be honest, I have to leave this relationship. I'm asking for more consistency. This is what it looks like. Is that something that you're willing or open to work on? These are all ways that we can communicate it. That's not control. That's showing up in alignment with your relational truth. So let's look at this through the attachment lens. Having an anxious attachment wound, you may be more likely to tolerate harmful behavior out of fear of losing the relationship and experiencing abandonment, rejection, neglect. Avoidant attachment wounding might have you tolerating a lot of things that you don't want, such as boundarylessness, because there's a fear of conflict or confrontation. An ambivalent attachment might allow you to tolerate a relationship, a job, etc., that doesn't meet your needs because it is too activating to make a decision and get into action. But secure attachment says something different. Secure attachment says, hey, I can love you and still say no to what harms me. And that would be the both connect and protect. Now, when relationships operate without healthy limits or boundaries, something predictable often happens. Resentment builds. Attraction erodes, safety dissolves, respect disappears, and eventually love becomes contaminated by toxins. Again, a great differentiator between healthy love and toxic love. Remember, both have love, but toxic love says, I love you, but I don't have trust and or respect of you. So limits or boundaries in relationships does not destroy love. In fact, it's the opposite. They actually protect it. So the question becomes, it's not, do I love them? The deeper question is, am I loving myself inside of this dynamic? Because if staying requires you to silence your voice, hide your feelings, ignore the signals your body is communicating to you, if you have to explain away disrespect or accept harm or hurt over and over and over again, then that is not the energy or vibration of love. That's self-abandonment. And no healthy relationship can be built on a foundation of self-abandonment. Having a direct connection with yourself allows you to be able to shift into a secure attachment. And when we are in a secure attachment, we can understand something very powerful. We understand that you can love someone and still require behavior that aligns with your values. You can care deeply and still walk away if necessary. You don't have to hate someone to leave. It doesn't have to be so bad in order to leave. You don't have to villainize someone to protect yourself. Sometimes the most honest thing we can say to someone is, I love you, but this particular behavior is not working for me. Or this relationship isn't working for me. And that's not being disloyal. That is self-respect. That is loyalty to self. And I don't think we really talk enough about, I mean, there's so much information about leaving relationships or setting limits in relationships that are, bad, quote unquote. We don't talk a lot about when we have to leave something that isn't all bad or entirely bad. It's really hard. And I know some of you are listening have had to do it, where someone is great but there are certain things about their patterning, their behavior, the way they show up that isn't aligned with our nervous system. So you are capable of unconditional love, but you are not required to tolerate disrespect, deception, abuse, control, emotional harm. Love survives in an ecosystem that has respect, honesty, repair, safety, mutual effort. Remember, boundaries or limits don't make love fragile. They make it sustainable. And one of the most secure things that you can ever say in relationships or do as far as action goes is, I love you and I also love myself. My favorite kind of relationships, and totally possible, even in the climate we live in now. Trust me, I've coached people at this point in every major city in the US. I have coached people in major cities all over the world. And everybody tells me, oh, you don't know, dating, it's so bad here. The universe, God, is more powerful than any limitation we see. When you are ready to love yourself and love someone else, which you guys are here to do. That's what all of this work. I had someone recently tell me she set a goal for herself and she's going to listen to one podcast episode every day. That is someone who is invested in figuring out a way to love herself more. So much so that she'll listen to me every day on this podcast. So you are here. You are here to love yourself. Something brought you here. Something called you here. We got that part. We need to keep practicing it. We are all hardwired for connection. We are all capable of love. But that combination of loving ourselves and loving someone else, you guys, that's where it's at. That's where we grow, develop, where our dreams are even better than we imagined them being. So I'm a big fan of boundaries. If you haven't learned this by now, I'm still working on them myself. But healthy love, that love that we've talked about, that availability in a secure attachment, it boils down to I can love you and I can love me. And I can be unconditionally loving. And I can also have limits around things that harm me and that prohibit me from feeling safe in the relationship. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.